A ghost of law awakens in the dark. Commander Ava Rostova stood on the bridge of the Stellograph, a place usually defined by the quiet confidence of measured starlight. Now a discordant hum vibrated through the deck plates, a sound that felt older than the ship, older than the star system itself. They were adrift in the Oort cloud of a neutron star's corpse, a graveyard where nothing should sing. The source was a behemoth of alloy and silence, a relic of an age no living human remembered its hull, a tapestry of sigils that pulsed with a faint internal light. The object was why they were here. The long-range survey had flagged a gravitational anomaly, but what they found was a derelict of impossible scale and design. Lyceum, the ship's mind, rendered it on the main screen a spindle of obsidian laced with conduits that resembled frozen lightning. Stakes were absolute. If this was a weapon, it predated every treaty. If it was a tomb, its occupant was a god or a demon. Her tactical officer, Jian, traced a finger over her console. Commander, the Carrion Lords have changed vector. They're burning hard. They know we're here. The name left a smear of acid in the sterile air of the bridge. Scavengers. Butchers who cracked open precursor sites with plasma cutters and sold their histories for scrap. This sleeping titan was the greatest prize they could imagine. The low hum from the relic seemed to answer a soft thrum that resonated not in the ears but in the bones. The vessel before them was a testament to a forgotten architecture. It was a sanctuary for a law that time had misplaced. Lyceum's analysis scrolled across the secondary displays, a cascade of impossibilities. The alloy had no recognizable energy signature, yet it bled a managed stream of radiation that should have been lethal. It was cold, yet its core held the placid temperature of a living thing. "They're hailing us," Jian announced, her voice tight. "Standard comms. The Carrion Lord flagship grave robbers due." Eva nodded, her gaze fixed on the relic. It was a saint ship, a cathedral of war, something spoken of only in fractured myths. "On screen, Lieutenant. Let's hear what the jackals have to say." The face that appeared was scarred and smug, a man named Kalen, who wore the authority of a predator. "Survey vessel Stellograph," Kalen began, his voice a gravelly sneer. "You are trespassing in a salvage claim. Power down your drives and prepare to be boarded. That derelict is ours by right of discovery." Eva felt a cold anger rise, but her training held it in check. "This is a restricted archaeological zone under Commonwealth Mandate 7, she replied, her tone level. "Your claim is invalid. Withdraw or you will be fired upon. A law is only as strong as the will to enforce it." Kalen laughed, a harsh grating sound. "Mandates don't reach this far into the dark, Commander. That old ghost is whispering my name. We'll take it piece by piece if we have to." The transmission cut, leaving only the image of the silent relic. "He's launching fighters." Jian confirmed, her fingers flying across her console. Dozens of them. Small, fast attack craft. They're screening a heavy boarding torpedo. Eva's mind raced. The Stellograph was a science vessel, not a warship. It had point defenses and a token laser battery enough to deter pirates, not to fight a dedicated salvage fleet. "Lyceum," she said, her voice sharp. "The relic. Can we interface with it? Is there any system we can access?" The AI's synthesized voice was calm, a stark contrast to the rising tension. "Access is conditional, Commander. The relic requires a key. The nature of this key is abstract." A child on a distant agri-world looked up at the pinprick of light that was her system's star, her father's hand on her shoulder. He told her stories of the brave explorers in ships like the Stellograph, the ones who pushed back the darkness and brought home knowledge. She hoped they were safe. She hoped they found something wonderful. "Define abstract." Eva pressed her eyes, never leaving the main screen where the enemy contacts blossomed like deadly flowers. The relic's outer systems are responding to our presence, Lyceum explained. It is broadcasting a query, a single repeating question, encoded in a base prime mathematical language. It asks for a precedent. This was no simple password. It was a test of character. The archive slept, but it did not dream. It weighed. A precedent for what Jian asked. Her focus split between the approaching fighters and the bizarre conversation. For intervention, Lyceum replied. It wants to know under what authority we would awaken it. It demands a lawful justification, not a tactical one. The first wave of carrion fighters screamed past their plasma cannons, spitting emerald fire that splashed harmlessly against the Stellagraph's kinetic shields. The boarding torpedo, however, continued its slow, inexorable approach. Eva understood. This was not a weapon to be unsheathed. It was a judge to be petitioned. Lyceum, open a channel to the relic. Use the same mathematical language. Transmit Commonwealth Mandate 7, the entire text. Follow it with every legal precedent regarding the preservation of non-sentient artifacts of historical significance. Her orders were crisp, decisive. This was a gamble, a prayer sent into the void. A debt cannot be paid with stolen coin. Her science officer, Ben, looked at her with wide eyes. Commander, you're citing legal texts at it. Eva met his gaze. It's not a weapon system we're trying to activate, Ben. It's a library. It teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers. The carrion lords think it's a sword. We have to prove we know it's a scale. The hum from the relic deepened the interlocking rings of its sigil, glowing with a soft golden light. The enemy fighters began a second pass this time, concentrating their fire, trying to overwhelm the shields. The Stellagraph shuddered as a plasma bolt struck home, bypassing the flickering barrier. Sparks cascaded from a ceiling conduit. Shields at 60%, Jian reported, her voice strained. The torpedo is 2 minutes from impact. Eva watched the relic, her heart pounding a steady, heavy rhythm against her ribs. Teach the hungry how to fish, and they will empty the oceans. Suddenly the relic moved. It did not ignite engines or fire thrusters. Instead, a section of its obsidian hull peeled back like the pages of a book, revealing a network of crystalline arrays. A beam of pure information, visible only to the ship's sensors, lanced out and touched the Stellagraph. It wasn't a scan, it was a handshake. Lyceum's voice filled the bridge, imbued with a sense of awe that Eva had never heard before. It has accepted our petition. It calls itself the anchorage of the 10th ledger. The boarding torpedo was now seconds away. The carrion fighters swarmed around it, protecting their payload. What is it doing? Eva demanded. It's not powering weapons. The AI's reply was swift. It is not a warship in the conventional sense, Commander. It is a registrar. It mirrors, it counts, and it balances. A sanctuary's walls are built from the convictions of those within. As Lyceum spoke, the crystalline arrays on the anchorage pulsed once, a brilliant flash of white light. The effect was instantaneous and utterly baffling. Every single plasma bolt fired by the carrion fighters froze in space, their emerald energy held in a perfect, glittering stasis. The fighters themselves, their engines suddenly choked, tumbled aimlessly. The boarding torpedo, its guidance system fried, drifted harmlessly past the Stellagraph. No explosion, no counterfire, just silence. Jian stared at her console, her mouth agape. All enemy craft are disabled. Their energy systems are nullified. It's like their power sources were just unplugged from the universe. The anchorage had not destroyed them. It had simply turned their own energy against them, creating a localized field that canceled out their ability to function. It had mirrored their aggression and rendered it impotent. A debt incurred must be repaid in the same currency. On the bridge of the grave robber's due, Kalen watched his fighters die on his screen, his smug expression replaced by a mask of disbelief and fury. "What is that thing?" he roared at his technicians. "What did it do?" But they had no answers. The relic had rewritten the rules of engagement in a single silent act. It had not fought back. It had delivered a verdict. A vignette of memory surfaced in Eva's mind, a lecture at the academy about the mythical saint ships of the first expansion. They were said to be keepers of the old laws vessels that could enforce treaties without firing a shot. They were dismissed as folklore, as stories told to frighten pirates. But the proof was before her, a silent obsidian giant that had just neutralized an entire attack wing without violence. The ledger does not forgive. It merely balances. Commander Lyceum set its tone, now holding a new layer of reverence. The anchorage is communicating. It has registered the Carrion Lord fleet as a hostile KSO entity acting in contravention of established law. It has opened a ledger entry for them. On the main screen beside the tactical display, a new window opened. It was a simple, elegant script showing the name Kalen and his ship, and next to it, a running tally of his transgressions. The surviving Carrion fighters, their systems slowly coming back online, began to retreat, their pilots spooked by a power they could not comprehend. Kalen's flagship, however, held its ground. A new energy signature was building in its forward section. "He's charging a spinal lance," Gian warned. "He's going to try to crack the relic's hull." It was an act of pure desperation, of a cornered animal lashing out. "You cannot threaten a mountain with a pebble." Eva watched the energy readings spike. The lance was a planet killer, a weapon of obscene power. "Lyceum, can the anchorage withstand?" that she asked, her voice calm despite the immense threat. "The anchorage will not need to," the AI replied. "It does not resist. It reflects." Before Gian could even register the firing sequence, a torrent of incandescent energy erupted from the grave robber's due, a spear of white-hot fury aimed at the heart of the ancient ship. The beam struck the anchorage's hull and vanished. For a split second, there was nothing. Then, from the exact point of impact, an identical beam erupted, traveling back along the same path. It wasn't a reflection. It was a perfect, instantaneous replication. The lance struck its own source ship with flawless precision. The grave robber's due exploded in a silent, brilliant flower of destruction, its debris field scattering across the void. The mirror shows only what is brought before it. The bridge of the stellograph was silent, save for the hum of its own life support. Eva stared at the expanding cloud of vaporized metal that had been Kalen's flagship. The anchorage had not attacked. It had held up a mirror, and the Carrion Lord had destroyed himself. It was the most terrifyingly elegant act of self-defense she had ever witnessed. It was justice delivered with the cold, impartial logic of mathematics. "Lyceum," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What have we woken up, though?" AI paused for a moment before answering. "We have awakened a precedent, Commander, a living embodiment of the law we claim to uphold. It has granted us stewardship, but it has also made us accountable." The weight of that responsibility settled on Eva's shoulders, heavier than any star. The scales of justice have no hands to hold them. They are balanced by truth alone. The anchorage began to move again, its obsidian hull reconfiguring. This time it wasn't peeling back. It was opening a docking bay, an invitation carved into its ancient form. A soft golden light spilled from within, beckoning them. It is inviting us aboard Lyceum, stated confirming what Eva already knew. It wishes to teach. This was the true beginning, the moment when history pivoted on their actions. A miner working the desolate asteroids of the Kuiper Belt paused his drill, his suit's radio crackling with the news from the outer dark. A lost ship, a ghost from the dawn of humanity, had been found. He wondered what it meant for people like him, small lives in a vast, often lawless expanse. He hoped it meant that some rules were so old and so right that even the stars could not forget them. Eva took a deep breath, the sterile air of the bridge filling her lungs. Gian, maintain a defensive perimeter. Ben, assemble a first contact team. We're going in. She looked at the yawning entrance of the ancient vessel, a gateway to a past that was about to become their future. The hum was no longer just in the deck plates. It was in her soul, a resonant frequency of duty and awe. A promise made to the dust is still a promise. The journey across the short distance in a shuttle felt like crossing an ocean. The scale of the anchorage was even more immense up close, its hull, a smooth, unbroken surface that seemed to drink the light. As they passed through the energy field that served as a hangar door, the interior was revealed. It was not the cold, metallic guts of a warship. It was a cathedral. Vast vaulted ceilings arched overhead, crisscrossed with conduits that pulsed with a soft internal luminescence. The air was cool and clean, with a faint scent of ozone, and something else, something ancient and sterile, like the air of a tomb that had never been sealed. There were no crew quarters, no mess halls, no barracks. There were only alcoves, archives, and data stacks that rose like pillars into the gloom. A library does not need soldiers, only guardians. A single figure awaited them on the docking platform. It was a construct humanoid in shape, but forged from the same crystalline material as the ship's arrays. It had no face, only a smooth, polished surface that seemed to reflect their own awe-struck expressions. It raised a hand not in greeting, but in a gesture of welcome. A voice echoed in their minds, not through their ears, a voice that was both masculine and feminine, old and young. You who seek the letter of the law are welcome in the anchorage of the 10th Ledger. Eva stepped forward, her sidearm holstered, her hands open. I am Commander Eva Rostova of the Commonwealth vessel Stellograph. We come in peace, seeking knowledge. The construct, the ship's avatar, inclined its head. Knowledge is the currency of order. You have demonstrated an understanding of this. You have petitioned where others would have plundered. You have offered precedent where others would have offered violence. The wisest ruler does not command. He instructs. Ben, the science officer, was practically vibrating with excitement, his scanner working furiously. Commander, the energy readings are stable. It's like the entire ship is a single solid-state computer. The processing power is astronomical. He was looking at the physical embodiment of a legal system, a judiciary given form and function. The avatar turned its smooth face towards him. We do not compute. We count. We do not command. We record. Every action has a consequence. Every debt has a due date. The 10th Ledger is the final accounting of all contracts, all treaties, all promises made under the light of forgotten stars. The words resonated with a profound, unshakable certainty. This was the bedrock upon which civilization was built. What happened to your creators? Eva asked the question that had been burning in her mind since they first saw the derelict. The avatar paused, the light within its crystalline form dimming for a moment. They became what they fought. They began to believe that the ledger could be amended, that the scales could be tipped in their favor. They sought to write laws in their own image, to turn a mirror into a weapon. A truth bent is a truth broken. The story was there in the silence between the words. A civilization that had created this perfect arbiter of law had ultimately fallen to the oldest of temptations, the desire to be the exception to the rule. The anchorage could not permit this. It was created to be an incorruptible record. When its creators sought to corrupt it, it withdrew. It severed its ties and sought the silence of the void, to await a time when the law would be valued for its own sake, not for the power it could grant. Gion's voice came over the comm from the stellograph. Commander, multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. They're not carrion lords. The transponders identify them as Commonwealth Judiciary Fleet. Eva's blood ran cold. The legalists, the ones who feared relics like this more than any pirate fleet. They didn't see a historical treasure or a guardian of the law. They saw a threat to their own authority, a power that could not be controlled or co-opted. The most dangerous cage is the one built from fear. A fleet of stark white cruisers and destroyers materialized in the system, their forms sharp and angular, a stark contrast to the ancient flowing lines of the anchorage. They were ships built to enforce, not to teach. A new hail came through this time from a stern-faced admiral whose uniform was heavy with medals and self-importance. Commander Rostova, this is Admiral Thorne of the Judiciary Fleet. You are to stand down and surrender that artifact. It is a rogue variable that threatens the stability of this sector. Ava looked from the Admiral's rigid face on her datapad to the serene, faceless avatar before her. Thorne saw a weapon. She saw a teacher. Admiral, she replied, her voice steady, "Payet vessel is the anchorage of the 10th Ledger, a historical site of unparalleled significance. It is under my protection as per Commonwealth Mandate 7. She was throwing their own laws back at them, using the very precedents she had used to awaken the ship. An echo cannot be argued with. It can only be heard. Thorne's lip curled in a sneer. Mandates can be suspended, Commander, especially when dealing with weapons of mass destruction. We have reason to believe that Artifact is responsible for the destruction of a salvage vessel. We are here to contain it permanently. He was twisting the truth, painting the anchorage's act of perfect self-defense as an act of aggression. He was doing exactly what its creators had done. The avatar turned its featureless face to Ava. The ledger is being challenged. A claim has been made against this vessel. A falsehood has been entered into the record. It must be balanced. The air in the hangar hummed with a new energy, a sense of immense ancient power stirring from its slumber. The crystalline pillars throughout the ship began to glow with a brighter, more intense light. The truth does not need a sword. It is the sword. Lyceum, Eva said into her comm, her mind racing to find a path through this new crisis. What is the anchorage doing? The AI's voice was strained as if it were struggling to process the sheer volume of data it was receiving. It is compiling a case, Commander. It is accessing every sensor log, every communication, every black box recording from every ship in this system for the last 72 hours. It is building a complete, unassailable record of events. On the bridge of Thorne's flagship, the verdict technicians scrambled at their consoles. Sir, we're being scanned. Not a tactical scan, it's data retrieval. It's pulling everything. We can't stop it. Thorne's face hardened. Fire a warning shot. Show them we mean business. A laser cannon on the verdict discharged a searing beam of red light that streaked towards the anchorage. A ruler who cannot be questioned is a tyrant in waiting. Just as with the Carrion Lord's lance, the beam struck the obsidian hull and was absorbed without a trace. But this time there was no mirrored attack. Instead, a vast holographic screen materialized in the space between the two fleets, a screen kilometers wide. On it in stark, undeniable clarity was the recording from the grave robber's Dew's own black box. It showed Kalen's order to fire the spinal lance. It showed his intent to plunder. Then a new recording appeared, this one from Thorn's own bridge. It played back his order to fire the warning shot, his words twisting the context of the situation. It laid his intentions bare for all to see. The anchorage was not fighting. It was testifying. It was presenting its evidence to the universe using the Judiciary Fleet's own data as its witness. A fact is a stubborn thing. Aboard the other ships of the Judiciary Fleet, captains and crews watched the irrefutable proof unfold. They saw the truth unvarnished and absolute. They had come to contain a monster, but the monster was the lie they had been told. Whispers turned to arguments. Doubts turned to dissent. Thorn's authority was evaporating not under fire, but under the light of pure, unadulterated truth. A young ensign on the bridge of the destroyer Precedent watched the holographic display, his heart pounding. He had joined the Judiciary Fleet to uphold the law, to be a force for order. He was now being ordered to fire on the very embodiment of that ideal. He looked at his captain and saw the same conflict in the older man's eyes. Thorn, enraged and humiliated, made his final fatal error. All ships, he bellowed, his voice cracking with fury, open fire, erase that thing from existence. But his orders were met with silence. Not a single ship in his fleet complied. One by one, their weapon ports closed. Their targeting sensors went cold. His own fleet, sworn to uphold the law, could not bring themselves to fire on a vessel that had just proven its case so completely. The consent of the governed is the only true source of power. The avatar on the docking platform turned to Eva. The ledger has been balanced. The falsehood has been countered with truth. No violence was necessary. The construct's voice was calm, but Eva could feel a sense of satisfaction, a sense of an ancient purpose being fulfilled. She had not commanded a weapon. She had given a truth, a voice. Admiral Thorn, isolated and ignored by his own fleet, was a king with no subjects. His flagship, the Verdict, stood alone, a monument to his arrogance. The anchorage made no move against him. It did not need to. It had already won. It had taught a lesson that would be remembered for 1,000 years, that the greatest power is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to prove. Law is the memory of a species. Eva felt a sense of profound clarity. Her role was not to be a commander in the traditional sense. It was to be a steward, a guardian of this incredible place. She was the liaison between a forgotten age of absolute law and a present that desperately needed to remember it. Lyceum, she said, her voice filled with a new sense of purpose, record everything. We are about to rewrite the book on jurisprudence. The avatar inclined its head. The first lesson is complete. Now the true work begins. There are other ledgers to be opened, other accounts to be settled. The universe is full of debts that have gone unpaid for too long. The golden light from the ship's interior seemed to brighten, to welcome her further into its hallowed halls. She and her small crew were standing at the dawn of a new era, an age of awakening. An ancient truth reawakened can reshape a galaxy. They walked deeper into the ship, into the heart of the archive. The air grew cooler, the light softer. Data stacks rose around them like ancient trees in a petrified forest, each one a record of a forgotten time. They were walking through the memory of a civilization, a library of laws that had governed worlds. Eva reached out and touched one of the pillars. It was cool and smooth, and for a moment, she felt a phantom echo of the minds that had built this place, their hopes, their dreams, and their ultimate failure. It was a sobering reminder of the fragility of even the greatest ideals. A lesson ignored is a crisis invited. Ben was in his element, his tricorder working overtime. The data storage medium is crystalline. Each molecule is encoded. The density is beyond anything we've ever conceived. There are millions of years of legal history in this single chamber. He was a scholar in the ultimate library, a child in a candy store of pure information. His wonder was infectious, a bright spot in the solemnity of the place. Suddenly, a new alert chimed on Eva's datapad. It was from Lyceum. Commander, I am detecting a subspace transmission originating from within the Judiciary Fleet. It's heavily encrypted, but it's not directed at Commonwealth Command. It's on a dark channel routed through multiple dead-drop relays. Espionage. Even here, in the face of this majestic truth, someone was playing their own secret game. A weed will grow in any garden. Trace it. Lyceum. Who is Thorn talking to? Eva demanded, her brief moment of peace shattered. The AI worked for a few tense seconds before responding. The encryption is exotic. It's a protocol I haven't encountered before. It's designed for extreme compartmentalization. However, the destination is clear. The message is being sent to a location within the Obsidian anchorage. Eva froze. The Obsidian anchorage was a lawless nebula on the far rim, a haven for pirates, warlords, and corporate entities that operated beyond the reach of Commonwealth law. It was a place where ledgers were written in blood, not ink. Thorn is colluding with outlaws. Why? It made no sense. A judiciary admiral, the supposed iron fist of the law, was communicating with the very people he was sworn to fight. A mask can hide a face, but not a motive. The avatar, which had been silent, now spoke again, its mental voice calm, but carrying an edge of cold certainty. There is an entry in the ledger for the one you call Thorn, an old debt. He was once a junior officer in a campaign against the privateers of the anchorage. His fleet was defeated. He survived. The official record states he escaped. The ledger records that he was ransomed. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Thorn wasn't just an arrogant legalist. He was compromised. He was owned by the very forces he pretended to oppose. His attempt to destroy the anchorage wasn't about fear of a rogue weapon. It was about destroying a witness. The ship's ability to reveal unassailable truth was a threat to his entire career, his entire life. Truth is a light that casts long shadows. His benefactors in the Obsidian anchorage would not want this vessel to reveal the extent of their influence within the judiciary. The avatar continued. They fear the mirror. They fear the scale. They have sent a message to their true masters, informing them that a ghost of the old law has awakened. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. This was no longer about a single rogue admiral. It was about a deep-seated corruption that reached into the heart of the Commonwealth's legal system. We have to assume they're sending a fleet. Jian's voice cut in over the comm, her tactical mind already a step ahead. A real one. Not scavengers or legalists. Professional corporate mercenaries. The kind that don't get spooked by holograms. She was right. The enemy that was coming would not be deterred by clever tricks or moral arguments. They would come with overwhelming force, intending to silence the anchorage permanently. An unpaid debt gathers interest. Eva looked at the avatar. Can you fight a fleet like that? A fleet that doesn't care about the law, that only understands force. The crystalline construct seemed to ponder the question. This vessel does not initiate violence. It only balances the scales. If an overwhelming force is brought against it, the counterweight must be equal. The ambiguity of the statement was unsettling. It was not a yes. A signal came from the stellograph. Commander, long-range sensors are picking up multiple high-energy hyperspace signatures. They're still distant, but they are converging on our position. Estimates suggest 3 battlecruisers, a dozen heavy frigates, and support craft, all flying the colors of the Obsidian Ring conglomerate. The wolves were at the door, and they were not alone. A single lie requires 1,000 more to protect it. The calm cathedral of the anchorage suddenly felt like a tomb again. They were one science vessel and one ancient pacifist archive against a corporate death fleet. The odds were impossible. But as Eva looked at the glowing pillars of data at the silent waiting avatar, she knew they couldn't run. Fleeing would mean abandoning the single greatest discovery in human history. It would mean letting the corruption win. Eva said, her voice resolute. Recall the first contact team. Prepare the stellograph for battle. We're not leaving. There was a pause, then Jian's firm reply. Understood, Commander. We'll hold the line. Ben looked at her, his face pale but his eyes determined. They were all in this together. They were the guardians now, whether they were ready or not. A duty accepted is a burden shared. The avatar extended a crystalline hand. It did not touch her, but Eva felt a sense of connection of a vast intelligence focusing on her. The ledger must be protected. You have shown yourself to be a worthy steward, Eva Rostova. You have placed law above personal safety. This is the cornerstone of civilization. We will show them the true weight of their actions. The hum inside the anchorage deepened once more, vibrating with a power that shook the very fabric of space. The crystalline arrays on its hull began to glow, not with a soft golden light, but with a brilliant, blinding silver. This time it wasn't preparing to teach a lesson. It was preparing to issue a sentence. A law ignored is an invitation to anarchy. The great mirror was about to reflect a firestorm. The shuttle ride back to the stellograph was a frantic, silent prayer. Eva's hands were steady on the controls, but her mind was a maelstrom. Ben was strapped in beside her, his face a mask of awed terror, while the rest of the contact team maintained a professional, rigid silence. Through the forward viewport, the stars were being blotted out by the arrival of the Obsidian Ring conglomerate. Their ships were knives of gunmetal gray brutalist designs that cared nothing for aesthetics and everything for function. They were not here to negotiate. A predator does not bargain for its meal. Their deploying, Jian's voice crackled over the comm, tinny and strained, forming a siege sphere around the anchorage. They're bracketing us, Commander. They intend to leave no survivors. The shuttle cleared the relic's energy field, and Eva gunned the engines, a tiny firefly fleeing a closing fist. The stellograph was waiting its docking bay, an open wound of welcome light. They landed with a jarring thud that spoke of urgency, not grace. On the bridge, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Every screen showed the enemy fleet, a wall of imminent death. The Orc flagship, the Calculated Risk, sat at the heart of their formation, a monster of a vessel bristling with weapon emplacements. They're hailing us. Jian reported, her gaze locked on the tactical plot. Audio only. It's their fleet, Commander. Eva strode to her command chair, the deck humming with the vibration of a ship preparing for the worst. Put it through. A voice can be as sharp as any blade. The voice that filled the bridge was calm, cultured, and utterly chilling. It was the voice of a man who signed death warrants between sips of expensive brandy. Commander Rostova, I am Executor Valerius. You have something that belongs to my employers, a relic that contains sensitive data. Surrender it, and I am authorized to let you and your crew leave unharmed. Your ship, of course, will be scuttled to ensure your silence. It was a threat wrapped in the language of a business transaction. A junior accountant on the corporate world of Cygnus X1 stared at a financial report from the Obsidian Ring conglomerate. He saw a fleet provisioned, a task force mobilized, all paid for through a dozen shell corporations. It was a violation of sector trade laws, a massive off-the-books military action. He typed a quick anonymous message to the Commonwealth's Commercial Crimes Division. It was a tiny act of defiance, a single drop of ink on a very large page. "We are a Commonwealth vessel in a restricted zone," Eva replied, her voice ringing with a conviction she didn't entirely feel. "This artifact is a protected historical find. Your fleet is here in violation of a dozen treaties." Valerius chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Treaties are for those who cannot afford private armies, Commander. You have 60 seconds to power down your drives." The channel went dead. The law is silent when guns begin to speak. 60 seconds. Gian repeated, her knuckles white on her console. "What are our options?" Eva looked at the serene, silent form of the anchorage. It was still glowing with that soft silver light, a beacon of law in a sea of lawlessness. "Our option," she said, her gaze firm, "is to trust the precedent we set." She turned to her comms officer. "Open a channel to the Judiciary Fleet, to the destroyer precedent. Let them see what's about to happen." The 60 seconds passed in a heartbeat. Then the universe caught fire. The entire Orc fleet discharged its primary weapons in a single coordinated volley. Lances of pure energy, swarms of plasma torpedoes, and clouds of kinetic slugs converged on the anchorage. It was enough firepower to slag a small moon. The Stellagraph's shields screamed, straining under the peripheral energy wash alone. A promise of violence is its own form of attack. The anchorage did not raise shields. It did not deploy countermeasures. As the storm of destruction was about to impact its hull, the silver light from its arrays pulsed, expanding outwards in a perfect silent sphere. The sphere was not a barrier of energy. It was a mirror of space-time. Every shot, every torpedo, every slug that entered the sphere was not reflected, but revectored. It was a flawless, instantaneous recalculation of trajectory. Plasma torpedoes intended for the relic's heart instead found the engines of a neighboring frigate. Laser beams sliced through the shields of their sister ships. The Orc fleet, in its perfect coordinated attack, had effectively fired upon itself. The symphony of destruction played out exactly as they had intended, but on the wrong instruments. Explosions blossomed across their formation, not from enemy fire, but from their own. It was a perfect counter-argument written in fire. On the bridge of the calculated risk executor, Valerius watched the chaos unfold, his calm demeanor finally cracking. "Cease fire. All ships cease fire," he commanded. His fleet was in disarray, crippled by its own immense power. He had brought a sword to a debate, only to find his opponent was a master orator who could turn his own words against him. Analysis. What was that? His technicians had no answer. It was physics that should not be possible. The anchorage had made its statement. It had demonstrated that raw power, when applied unlawfully, was simply a tool of self-destruction. But Valerius was no fool. He was a professional. A wounded wolf is still a wolf. Switch to kinetic bombardment only, he ordered, his voice regaining its cold composure. Asynchronous firing sequences, no more coordinated volleys, and deploy the Jackal drones. I want its attention divided. Thousands of small, semi-autonomous drones poured from the Orc ships, swarming towards the anchorage like angry hornets. Simultaneously, the frigates began launching massive guided asteroids, dumb projectiles that carried no energy signature to be easily mirrored. It was a new strategy to overwhelm the ancient ship, not with a single powerful argument, but with 1,000 meaningless ones, to choke it with chaos. The anchorage began to struggle. Its re-vectoring sphere flickered. It could handle a few dozen projectiles, 100 even. But thousands of independent targets, all on different trajectories, were a different matter. It was a system designed for elegant, singular legal contests, not for a brawl. "Lyceum, what's happening?" Eva asked, watching the tactical display with growing dread. A truth can be drowned in a sea of lies. The anchorage's processing capacity is being overwhelmed. The AI reported its voice for the first time, showing a hint of strain. It calculates the lawful consequence for each action. The drones and kinetic slugs represent thousands of individual, simultaneous actions. It is being subjected to a denial-of-service attack on a cosmological scale. The drones began to slip through. Small, concussive explosions started to pepper the relic's hull, insignificant on their own, but a death by 1,000 cuts. Eva's mind raced. The anchorage was a judge, not a soldier. It needed a case to rule on, a law to interpret. It couldn't fight a mob. Valerius isn't just attacking the ship, she realized aloud. He's attacking its very nature. He's using lawlessness itself as a weapon. The solution had to be equally abstract. It had to be something that turned the chaos back into a single, cohesive argument. A judge cannot rule on a riot. He must first identify the insider. Lyceum, she ordered, a desperate idea forming in her mind. The Jackal drones. They're semi-autonomous, but they're still networked. They're receiving orders from Valerius's flagship. "I need you to get into that network." The AI's response was immediate. "Their encryption is military-grade, Commander. It would take time we do not have." Eva slammed her fist on the armrest. There had to be a way. Ben, her science officer, suddenly looked up from his console. "Commander, the ORC is a corporation. A ruthless one, but still a corporation. Their network protocols will have bylaws, terms of service, acceptable use policies. Even their drone software will have an end-user license agreement buried somewhere in the code." It was a long shot, a ridiculous, bureaucratic long shot. A contract once signed is a chain. Eva stared at him, then a slow smile spread across her face. It was insane. It was brilliant. "Lyceum, he's right. Don't try to break the encryption. Scan the drone command signal for its source code. Find the legal boilerplate, the fine print. Transmit it to the anchorage." Her order was met with a moment of computational silence, as if the AI itself was baffled. Then it complied. The Stellagraph's powerful sensors focused on the stream of data flowing from the calculated risk to its drone swarm. Lyceum's processors sifted through terabytes of targeting data and hostile code, searching for the digital equivalent of a footnote. And it found it. A block of text embedded deep in the drone's operating system, a standard corporate liability waiver and terms of use agreement. It was a contract. "A flaw in the foundation will bring the whole house down." The moment the data was relayed, the anchorage acted. The flickering re-vectoring field collapsed, but it was replaced by something new. A single needle-thin beam of silver light lanced out and touched the calculated risk. It wasn't an attack. It was a legal summons. On the bridge of Valerius's flagship, every screen suddenly went blank, replaced by a single scrolling block of text, the company's own drone usage agreement. Valerius stared in disbelief. A specific clause was highlighted in red. "The deployment of this asset in a manner that constitutes a breach of registered sector treaties shall render all command and control protocols null and void." It was a standard legal clause inserted by corporate lawyers to avoid liability, a clause no one ever thought would be enforced. The anchorage was not just a judge. It was a contract lawyer with a God's eye view. A breach of contract has been recorded. The Avatar's voice echoed not just in Eva's mind, but across the open comms channels of every ship in the system. The contract is now void. All assets under this contract are hereby placed in receivership. In the next instant, every single Jackal drone froze in place. Then, as one, they turned and flew directly back towards the ships that had launched them, their warheads now armed. The Orcs' own weapons had been legally repossessed. You are always bound by the rules you write for others. Panic erupted across the Orc fleet. Their own drones, their own assets were now the enemy. Ships tried to shoot them down their point defenses, filling space with a desperate web of fire. But it was too late. The drones slammed into their former masters, causing a chain reaction of explosions that ripped through the conglomerate's formation. It was a perfect poetic justice delivered by the letter of their own law. Executor Valerius watched his fleet tear itself apart, his face a mask of cold fury. He had been beaten not by superior firepower, but by a legal technicality. He had one card left to play. Ramming speed, he ordered his helm officer. If we are to be erased from the ledger, we will take the accountant with us. The calculated risk, its hull scarred and bleeding fire, began to accelerate towards the anchorage. An act of desperation is a confession of defeat. He's going to ram the relic, Gian yelled. The massive battlecruiser was a kinetic weapon of immense power. The anchorage had no defenses against a physical impact of that magnitude. Before Eva could even think of a response, a flash of movement caught her eye. The Judiciary Destroyer Precedent, which had been holding back and observing, suddenly surged forward, placing itself directly in the path of the oncoming battlecruiser. "This is Captain Eva Rostova," a new voice announced, calm and steady. "You are not alone." The captain of the Precedent had seen enough. He had chosen his side. It was a suicidal maneuver. The small destroyer would be annihilated. But it was an act of profound courage, a declaration that the law was worth dying for. A sacrifice made for an ideal is never a waste. But the sacrifice was not needed. The anchorage pulsed with silver light again. It was not a weapon. It was a tool, a targeted gravity well formed directly in front of the calculated risk. The ship did not explode. It simply stopped. Its massive engines strained against a force they could not overcome. Its forward momentum nullified in an instant. The immense kinetic energy had to go somewhere. The battlecruiser's own structural integrity failed. It tore itself apart under the strain, collapsing in on itself like a crushed can. The destruction was silent, total, and executed with the surgical precision of a final judgment. There was no explosion, only the quiet wreckage of a broken contract. The ledger entry for the calculated risk was now closed. The universe demands balance in all things. Silence descended upon the battlefield. The surviving Orc ships, their command structure shattered, began to surrender, broadcasting their intentions on all frequencies. The Judiciary fleet, led by the Precedent, moved in to secure them. The battle was over. Eva slumped back in her chair, the adrenaline draining away, leaving only a profound sense of exhaustion and wonder. They had won. The law had won. The Stellograph had not escaped unscathed. During the chaotic drone attack, a stray kinetic round had impacted their port engine nacelle. Alarms blared from engineering. "Casualty report," Eva commanded, her voice hoarse. Gian's face was grim. "Engineering took a bad hit. We've lost FTL capability and 3 crew members are injured, including Ben. He was thrown against a console. He's unconscious, but the medics say he'll live. The cost of victory. It was always paid. A scar is a reminder that a wound has healed." The Avatar's voice entered her mind once more, soft and serene. The accounts are balanced. The stewards have proven their worth. The law has been upheld. The silver light of the anchorage faded, replaced by the warm golden glow of its teaching mode. It had been a judge. It had been an enforcer. Now it was a library once more. The crisis had passed. The lesson had been learned. Weeks turned into months. The stellograph was repaired, its scars a testament to the battle it had witnessed. The story of the anchorage of the 10th Ledger spread like wildfire through the Commonwealth. It was a legend brought to life, a force that could dismantle a corporate empire with its own bylaws. Admiral Thorne was tried and convicted of treason, his career ending not with a bang, but with the quiet closing of a cell door. A new precedent had been set. The ancient relics were not to be feared or exploited. They were to be learned from. Ava Rostova was no longer just a commander. She was the first steward of the anchorage, her name forever linked with the reawakening of a law older than nations. She stood on the bridge of the stellograph, looking out at the magnificent obsidian form of the ancient ship. The rest of the new Guardian fleet, composed of ships from the reformed judiciary, held a respectful distance. Her life had been irrevocably changed. She was no longer an explorer of stars, but a guardian of the principles that allowed civilizations to reach for them in the first place. The universe was vast and often dark, but she now knew that it operated on a moral calculus as real and as unforgiving as gravity. Her eyes drifted to a dedicated monitor on her command console, a direct feed from the heart of the anchorage. It displayed a single simple entry from the Great Archive, a testament to the events that had transpired. The ledger entry for the Obsidian Ring conglomerate was marked with a single glowing rune. It was a symbol of finality, of a debt paid in full, a record closed for all time. The weight of her new duty was immense, a responsibility that would span the rest of her life. But it was not a burden. It was a privilege. The anchorage had slept for eons, waiting for a species that was ready to listen, ready to learn that true strength was not in the power to command, but in the wisdom to arbitrate. Humanity had been tested, and for the first time in a very long time, it had proven itself worthy. The sleeper has awakened, and the galaxy will learn to count again.